Okay, so in this video, we will add the reset password feature to our website. So for example, if I forget my password, I can click on this link and reset my password. So Laravel documentation gives us a step-by-step process that we need to follow to implement this feature. So first we need to prepare our model and database. But again, because we are using the default user model and migrations, we don't need to do anything here because it's already included. So we need to skip to the routing part. And we need a few routes. The first one is a get route that would show a form to the user. So it's a request form, so they can request a new password reset link. And of course, we want to keep all the logic for reset password in one place. So let's create a controller for it first. Let's go to the terminal and repeat the previous command or just type it. We want to say PHP artisan make controller, and I will create a reset password controller inside our auth folder. So there we have it now. Next, we want to create our first route. So I'm going to copy this get route from Laravel documentation. Then open our auth.php and paste that route inside the guest group because we want only the guest users to access this. And it doesn't make sense if a user is logged in and they want to reset their password. So I'm going to make a comment here and say reset password. And what we are doing here, we have a get route that goes to forgot password, and it is just returning a view. Again, we don't want to return it here. And of course, we want to return an inertia view. So we can delete that, add an array, and use our reset password controller with our own function. So I'm going to call it request pass or request password. We don't need the middleware, of course, because we are inside this group, but we do need the name and we need to keep it as it is. So let's go to our reset password controller and create our public function, which we called request pass. And again, we want to return an inertia view. So we can say return inertia render, and let's have a component in our auth folder, which I will call forgot password. Now let's create that view. So inside our auth folder, alongside with all the other view components, I can create forgot password.view. Going back to the documentation, we can see they say this page or view should have a form with one field, which is email. So what we can do to save time, grab everything from login page and paste it in this component. So we need our imports and we need our form because we are submitting one, but we don't need any of these fields. All we need is an email. So let's delete these two properties. And then of course we need our submit function, but we don't need the options, so we can delete that. And the route we want to submit, we don't have at the moment. So for now, let's just delete this and leave it empty. Let's change the head tag to forgot password. And then we don't need a title, so let's delete that. For this p tag, I'm just going to paste some text. We are just informing the user that they can reset their password if they want. We want to keep our error messages component, and in our form, we don't need any field except the email. So I will keep that one, but I will delete everything else, and of course keep the button as well. For the text of the button, I can say send password recent link. And this is all we need for this component. And we can also delete these extra imports that we don't need anymore. So now we need a route to submit this form or handle this request. Let's go back to the Laravel documentation, and we have our second route right here. So we can just grab this whole post route and copy it, then go back to our auth.php and paste it under our get route. So of course, we don't want to keep the function here. So let's cut this out of this page and then replace that with our reset password controller and a function name. So I want to call it send email. Again, we don't need the middleware. Let's delete that. And the name, which is called password email. So nothing too special right here. We have our post route that goes to forgot password, and our send email function will handle that request. So let's create this function in our reset password controller. So under the first function, I'm going to paste what we have from this page. Then I can add the public keyword and the name of our function. So we said send email and then see what we are doing here. So of course we are accepting the request, which is imported up here. Then we are validating that one input field. So we have only the email field and we just want to make sure it is filled and it is a proper email. Then we are using the password facade. So we need to import that. Make sure you import it from facade and not validation rules. So I have it up here and using this function that would send a reset password link to the email we pass to this function. And of course, the email we are providing is coming from our form. And then we are saving the result of that statement or that process inside this status message. So this will give us either a success or a failure. And right here at the bottom, we are checking if that status message was a success, or basically this reset link sent from password facade. Then we go back with a status message and whatever the text is. Otherwise, we will go back with an error message. So the success message key is the status and the error message key is email. And we are going back to this page. So that means we can accept this status as a prop and send it to our view component so we can show it to the users. So let's do that. We did this in the previous video. We want to pass an array as a second argument and say we have a status key and the value of that would be from our session messages with the key status. So that is this one down here. So now we have this prop. Let's go back to our forgot password. And somewhere in the script tag, we want to use define props and say we have a status prop of type string. Then we can import our session messages. So we did this in the previous video. We created a component for our session messages, and maybe right below the errors, we will show our session messages. So our component is looking for a status prop and we are accepting it up here. It just has the same name, so we can use it or bind it to that attribute. All right, so we have two routes now, one for requesting a password reset link and the other one is to actually handle that. Let's attach this route to this link in our login page. So I'm going to copy the name and go to login.view, and down here we have a text link that goes to home. We want to replace that with the name of our password request route. Then let's go back to our project, give it a reload and click on this link. We go to that form. We have our text, we have our email field, and of course the button. Next, we want to go back to our forgot password and our submit function and just use the second route, which is password.email, for the route of this post request. Now, again, back to our website. If I press send password reset link, we see an error message. If I provide an email that doesn't exist in our database, then we get another message. So it is working properly, and we can't really test out an actual email because we still need to add a few more routes. So you can see we get an error that password reset not found. So that is our next step. Back to Laravel documentation, we need to create our reset password form. So again, we have a get route. Let's copy this and go back to our auth.php. And we can also close this login page and paste that route right here. So the first two routes are used for requesting a password, and the next ones are actually handling that reset password. We have a get route that is going to show a form again, and it has a token, which is going to be a dynamic value provided by Laravel. And then a function that is returning a view and also a token that is going to be our prop. So for now, I'm going to cut this function out of here. Then we want to use our reset password controller again, like this, and the function that is going to handle that I will call reset form. So again, this is the route that will show a form for reset password. Again, we don't need the middleware. Let's delete that. And our route is called password.reset. Now let's create this function in our controller. So same process. I'm going to paste that function and add the keyword public and also the name reset form. So now this is the Laravel way, and we are working with Vue.js and Inertia. So I'm going to change this around a bit so we can delete this part and also this whole return statement. So we want to return an Inertia view, of course, and the view we want to return I would call reset password. So for now, let's just create the view and we will come back to this. So inside the auth folder, we can have a reset password.view. And in this view, we need a form with email, password, and password confirmation. But for now, let's leave it empty and go back to our reset form function. So you notice in the Laravel documentation, we need a token, and that is being sent to the view or the component as a prop. So we need to do the same thing. What we can do here, accept the request object and then add a second argument for this render function to define our props. In order to grab the token, we can create a token key here, and the value of that can be grabbed from request route and the parameter which is called the token. Because remember, this route has a token parameter, and we can grab it using the route function on the request object and then pass down that parameter's name. It's like grabbing an input field, but instead we are just grabbing it from the route itself. We can also grab the user's email using the request object, because when they visit this page, the email would be in the request object, so we can send it as a prop to our view component. So now we have our reset form function that is returning the reset password view component, and it has two props. One is the email, one is the token. So again, we need email, password, and password confirmation. So what I'm going to do, open our register view component and copy everything, then paste it here. We can also close this forget password, don't need that. And then let's change things around. So of course, we don't need a name, but we need a token. We did this in the Laravel series, but let me explain what's going on here. So when we submit this form, Laravel expects these fields in the request: email, password, password confirmation, and a token. So that means when we submit our form, we need to have these properties or values in the request object so Laravel can process this request. And we are sending the token and the email as a prop to this component. So we can grab that using the props macro and save the return inside a variable. So we can use define props and then say we have a token that is type string and also an email that is type string as well. So this is just Vue.js, and we are grabbing our props and then saving it inside this variable. So down here, we can say token is going to be props token, and same thing for the email, props email. And of course, the password will be provided by the user. Now, when we submit the form, we don't have a route for it, so let's delete that. And we can keep this part since we have these two fields, and we will reset the form when it's finished or when it's processed. Now let's go down to our template or the markup. For the title, I want to say reset password. And we don't need this p tag. Let's delete it. And for the title, let's just say enter your new password. Like this. We have our error messages. So we don't have session messages. We don't need to worry about it. Then we have our form. Nothing changes here. We don't need a name, so let's delete that. We need our email. And since the v model is coming from form.email, that means it should have the value of the user's email who is trying to reset the password. Then we have password, password confirmation. We don't need this text. Let's delete that. And for the button, we just want to say reset password like this. And I'm going to put these on new lines. And I think we are done with this view. We do have one import here we don't need, so we can delete that. Now we need a route to submit this form and handle the request. So back to the documentation, we have our last route and a handler. So let's copy everything here, go back to our auth.php and paste it here. First thing, I want to cut out this whole function so we have more room to see what's going on. We have a post route that goes to reset password, and we want to use our reset password controller. The function that is going to handle that, I would call reset handler, and the middleware, of course, it's going to be guest, so we can delete it. It's up here. And the name is going to be password.update. So this is the name we want to use in our reset password. So I can just copy it and paste it here before I forget. So I'm going to say public and go back to the documentation and grab this function again because I don't have it anymore. So I can copy the function all the way to the closing curly bracket and paste it here. So let's add the reset handler name and also explore and see what's going on in this function. So again, we are accepting the request and then validating our input fields. We are saying the token is required. So that's the one we are using the props for it. We have email, again required, and it must be an email, and the password that is required, confirmed, and let's change the minimum characters to 3. Afterwards, much like what we did up here, we are creating a status variable and we are setting that to password facade and the reset function. Then for the reset function, which requires the credentials and a callback function, we are passing down the email, password, password confirmation, and token. And the callback function, which grabs the user, so let's import that, and a new password string. Then we are filling the password field in our database using this password, which we get from the form, and then we want to hash that. So we can use the hash facade. And also we are creating a random remember me token from str class. So this one we need to import manually from support since VS Code doesn't recognize that. So I'm just pasting it up here and going back to the function. And then we are saving the updated fields on the user instance and then fire up a new event. And when we are done with that part, again, we are checking if the status return or the message was the same as the value of this password reset from the password facade. Then we would redirect back to the login page with a status message. So that means we need to add this status session message to our login page. So we will do that in a moment. But if there is an error, we would return back to the same page, which is this page, and we will show the error message. So before testing out everything, let's add the session messages to our login page. Let's go to our authenticate controller first, and where we render the view component, we want to pass an array and create our status prop and set the value of that to session status. Then we can go to our login view component and import session messages. And then we can also accept the props. So let's say define props and provide an object where we would have a status of type string. Then we can use our session messages under error messages, and then we can bind that status to the prop we get from the controller. So right here, basically our session message. Okay, so I'm going to close authenticate and log in and then test out the reset password feature. So I'm going to go back to home page first, which we cannot access because we need to log in. Now let's say I forgot my password. So I'm going to that link. I would add this email, which doesn't exist. So of course we get an error. But if I provide my email address and press the button, we need to wait. And we will get the status message because that was successful. So then if we go back to mail trap, we have this reset password notification. So if we click on this link, it will take us to a new page. And notice in the URL, we have a token and also an email that is set to my email. And that's what we see in this input field. So that means the token and the email is already filled. Now, if I provide a password that is not correct, of course, we get the error. If I change my email and provide a password, then we can see there's another error message. So everything is working properly. If I add the right information, press reset password, we go back to the login page with this status message and we can log in with the new password and everything works. And of course, I need to verify my email now because I haven't done it yet. So now let's do this too. I can receive a new verification email. Here I have it and I can verify my email so I can go to the home page. So our reset password feature is also in place and the users can reset their password if they want to. And of course, we can test this out in a dark mode and see how it looks. And I notice I keep getting this message even though I am verified. And that's because of this intended method in our store function in authenticate controller. So if we change this, for example, to route and then pass down home, and we still have our home route protected by the verified middleware, right? So if we go to the home page, it works. You can see I don't get that page. And if I log out and log in again, then I go to the home page. So that intended method is not working the way we want, and for now I'm going to keep it as route. And in the future videos, when we create more routes and user dashboard and profile, then we will redirect the user to that page if there is no intended place. But for now, I'm going to keep it like this. So that is our reset password. And one more feature I would like to add is password confirmation. For example, if a user want to access their dashboard or profile, they need to confirm their password before accessing that page. So that's the feature we will apply in the next video.